Greetings and welcome. If you haven't heard of Spotify for podcasters, it's the easiest way to create and promote your podcast. It's free. That's right, it's free to download. It has built-in tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast from your cell phone or any smart device. Spotify for podcasters also distributes your podcast on virtually any platform that streams podcasts, like Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple and Google Podcasts, and much more. You can even monetize your podcast with no minimum listeners. Spotify for podcasters is your one-stop app for podcasting. Remember, it's free.
Welcome to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we have uncensored conversations, we exchange information, and we provide a ton of resources for all the listeners and the viewers. That's right, we're streaming on all major podcasts, and you can watch every interview that we do from here on out on Spotify, as well as our YouTube channel, which is our company, Penton Consulting Solutions, LLC. I am Larry Penton. Everybody calls me LP. I'm your fire medic / CEO / podcast host. I'm also the executive producer of the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. And remember, if you're searching for us, it's all 4 words, Trigger Warning Talk podcast. We got a great episode that we're starting today, as well as the rest of this month, because this is June and this is Pride Month for those that don't know or forgot. So this month we're going to dedicate each episode every Thursday to a guest who is part of the LGBTQ plus community. Next week we got a 3-part series talking about LGBTQ plus issues with a very special guest. I won't give that up right now, because right now we got my man, my young brother, the one, the only, Mr. GQ himself from the West Coast, Mr. Raymell Bentley in the building, the global spiritual life coach and public speaker and the energy healer. And you know what? I'm not going to even give you a whole CV. They can look it up. I got, you know what, matter of fact, let me just share it on the screen. See, that's why y'all need to watch these podcast interviews, because y'all miss so much that I share with the audience, but that's okay. Before we get into all that, let me give you all the disclaimers. This is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. We are sponsored by Spotify for podcasters. Again, we're produced by Penton Consulting Solutions, LLC. If you are triggered at any point during this podcast, and I mean at any point, and you need help immediately, please call 911. That's going to get you all the mandated reporters from EMS, fire, and police. If you don't have an immediate need, but you still need help, we got a ton of resources that we put in every show note for every listener and every viewer of this podcast. If you need help with domestic violence, sexually based offenses, human and sex trafficking, or missing persons, we provide a ton of links for you and their websites, as well as their phone numbers. If you need help with substance abuse, whether it's you, intimate partner, a loved one, a stranger, we have 3 links that we provide with the phone numbers also. We provide the numbers for Al-Anon for the supporters, Narcotics Anonymous if you have substance abuse issues, and finally, Alcoholics Anonymous. And finally, if you need help with suicidal ideation or know somebody that's suicidal in the United States, there's a toll-free number that's available 24/7, 988. 988. They also have access to some behavioral health resources also. That being said, Mr. GQ himself, Raymell Bentley. Raymell, I want you to give us just a brief overview of who you are, and then we're just going to jump into your story, because we're going to talk about your story. We're going to talk about the work that you do as a global spiritual energy coach, a public speaker, and a healer. We're going to talk about situational awareness. We're going to talk about intimate partner violence and STDs or STIs, sexually based infections. We're going to talk about HIV and AIDS. We're going to talk about Bentley gems, among a bunch of other things we're going to talk about. Let's just start off talking about you. Who is Raymell Bentley?
First, I want to say thank you for having me on Trigger Warning. It truly is a pleasure and honor to be in this space and have this conversation with you today. Who is Raymell? That's the question I ask myself daily. From what I've discovered in this 40 years of being in this world as Raymell, I play a lot of different characters in this thing called life. I am a global spiritual life coach, a public speaker. I am just someone who wants to bring light, love, and just good energy throughout whatever environment I enter in, and just be an example of what that looks like so I can give others permission to do the same in their own unique way, shape, and form.
You know, when we talked and did our pre-interview, you talked about your early days. You grew up and was born and raised in LA. What was life like for you when you were younger?
Growing up, I was born and raised in Inglewood, California. From the time I entered this world, honestly, I never felt safe. I never felt loved. I never felt worthy. I never felt just enough, honestly. I grew up, my mother was 19. My father was 14 when I was born into this world. My father was into the gang world. My mother was into substance abuse, and there was just a lot of neglect and chaos in the household. So I always just felt as though I was searching for something or something to give me love or make me feel enough or make me feel just worthy in general. Well, actually, rewind. Just growing up, I always knew that I was different from the environment that I was born into. So I never really felt like I fit in. And I always felt like, in a sense, a black sheep, because I wasn't the rowdy type. I wasn't the chaotic type. But to an extent, I felt like I had to pretend to be that to fit into what I was born into. But I always knew that wasn't my true nature. I would always just have a big smile on my face and always just want others to feel good and just be that ray of sunshine. That was my nickname growing up, is Smiley Ray or Ray of Sunshine, because I always genuinely smiled and I always just treated people kindly and nice, and I always wanted people to feel good. So growing up, there was a lot of physical and emotional abuse. So behind closed doors, after being like that light for others, I just always felt like that was my mask that I was able to wear out in the world, because I didn't know how to cope and deal with what was happening in my inner world of the house, of the home that I stayed in. So it just made me, a way to numb me feeling the pain was to bring sunshine to others, because it just kept me from recognizing that there was a lot of rain and storms in my life. And yeah, there was a time where I remember I was 14 and I'm my mother's oldest son, and she was being abused by her husband at this time. And I was at 14 and I'm like, okay, I got a little facial hair. My voice is changing a little so I could protect you. And I went to go and protect her. And she told me that was her husband. He wasn't going anywhere and I had to leave. And that at that point was the worst pain and rejection and abandonment that I've ever felt in my life. And I moved in with my aunt and uncle at 14. And there was a time where they were at work, and I remember I went into my aunt and uncle's their bathroom, and I opened up the medicine cabinet, and I was just in so much pain during that time because I had that imprint of abandonment and rejection, that I opened up the medicine cabinet and I picked up the first bottle of pills that I can find, and I just took a bunch of pills because I didn't want to be here anymore. And I don't know if it was that I wanted to end my life. I honestly don't feel like I did want to end my life. I just wanted the pain to go away. So anything that can numb that feeling that kept lingering within me, I wanted it to go. And good thing is I picked up a bottle of vitamins versus a bottle of something that could have took me out. So that was where I started my health and wellness journey unconsciously, but it was, in a sense, it was the universe telling me that I have great things for you to do in this world, and I'm not done with you yet. So this is just the beginning.
When you think about being a young kid and you think about the traumas that you went through, what was the first trauma that you experienced as a youth? Because what we want to do is we want people to understand that I always say when it comes to trauma, anybody can get it and anybody can give it. Nobody's immune to trauma. Nobody's immune to ACEs or adverse childhood experiences. For you, what would you say was the thing that stood out to you the most as far as your ACEs?
I would say the first form of trauma that I experienced was physical abuse. That was definitely the first imprint of trauma that was embedded within me. Being hit for not finishing my food, or being hit for not wanting to go to sleep, or doing something that my mother wanted me to do, that really made me not feel safe to express myself or to ask for something that I needed or wanted. So I just stayed muted because I didn't want to get abused.
I remember one of the things that you said when you were, when we did our pre-interview, you said that your dad would try to have you around other young ladies because he wanted you to either hook up with them or just be in their company, or to see if you were interested in them. And you said that was kind of a turning point for you because of the interactions that you had with these young ladies. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah. I've known that I was never, ever attracted to women. From the time I came into this world, I knew that I looked at girls, or at the time young girls, as friends, but nothing in a romantic, intimate type of way. So I've always known that about myself, and I knew that I never really fit in with the guys because they were into sports and physical activity, and just the things that they liked was not something that interests me. And I knew I was always different. I always related and connected more with girls. And at the age of 7, I was molested by my mother's daughter's friend. So that really just put an imprint in me of well, this is my safety that I felt, but now I can't trust them because I've been taken advantage of by what I thought was my mother's daughter's friend, our friend's daughter, I should say, that I just didn't, it felt like I couldn't trust. So when I would be with my father, because he was in and out of my life, and he would try to put me into settings with girls, he didn't know how uncomfortable and how paralyzed I became because I never was able to express what happened to me. And I always kept that little secret deep within me, that every time that he would try to hook me up, he was, in a sense, re-traumatizing me unconsciously because he never knew I had that experience. And every time I would be in an intimate, close setting with a girl after that experience, I would go into the fight, flight, or freeze. And I would just freeze because I had nowhere to run and I couldn't really fight much. So I just had become paralyzed.
What type of responses were you getting from these young ladies? Did they recognize? Did they criticize? Did they embrace? What were their reactions? Did they feel rejected at all?
Well, I never was able to tell them or speak in regards to my sexual preference or my sexuality, because that was during a time where if you did reveal that a lot of families were disowning you, or you would get kicked out, or there was a lot of rejection. So I never felt safe to share that about myself. So to an extent, I had to play the part or act the role to act as if I was interested, because I didn't feel safe to reveal. So I had to fake the funk to not let my father know that was something I wasn't interested in. So the thing is, I've always been extremely attractive. That's just my gift that I've been given when I came into this world. So I've always had girls flock to me. Always. I remember when there was times where I would be with my uncle and girls would literally follow me around, like groups of girls follow me around the store just to see me or look at me. So I've always had girls flock to me. But when my father would like put me in those situations, I couldn't do anything. Like I wouldn't act on it because I knew that that wasn't something that I would ever want to do. But it would turn from it being something they probably thought was going to be, oh, he likes me, to where I can't help but to be me. So it turned into a friendly exchange, even though that may not have been their intention. But that's how I know how to interact with women. So it always would come across as, oh, he's just one of the in a sense, the girls, because I didn't know how to like approach them in a try to pursue them way. That's just never been something that I knew how to do or even desired to do.
How old were you during this time?
I want to say around 10, 11. It's when my father like would try to introduce me to the girls.
During this era, in what year is this?
I want to say it was in the mid-90s.
In the 90s, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Inglewood at that time was really going through a lot with the gang life and you know, the NWA and Ice-T and all the glorification. You know, Dr. Dre's Chronic album was out. The Chronic, you know, Snoop Dogg, Death Row, Tupac, all of these images that we see, you know, of the machismo. You got to be hard, you got to be tough, you got to be rough. I remember one of Ice Cube's runs said, "I don't bang, I rock the good rhyme," you know. But he was associated with the street life because he talked a lot about what was going on in the hood. For you, coming from a family where your dad was a gangbanger, I'm sure that had to be really difficult, especially because there was so much homophobia being talked about in hip hop, in the media. You know, the 80s were just fraught with images of like being from LA, you know, Magic Johnson, when he talked about, hey, I got to retire because I've contracted HIV, and all the flack that he got, you know, people like Karl Malone not wanting to touch the basketball. You know, there was a lot of ignorance that was going on because we didn't know a whole lot about HIV like we know now. And thank goodness, you know, there's tons and tons, you know, and if you're still ignorant on HIV in 2023, that's intentional. That's truly intentional. I'm gonna get off my soapbox in a second. That's truly intentional. But I want to ask you, how did you deal with life in LA with all this homophobia and all of these stereotypes and these stigmas and taboos living as a gay male? Because you didn't come out until what age?
I didn't come out until 21.
Okay. So 11 years later. So what was life like for you, quote unquote, being in the closet?
It wasn't easy because I am who I am, meaning yes. I've never been a hard exterior. I've never been a macho or manly guy. And even when I would try to portray to be that, it just felt so inauthentic. And I know it came across that way because I've always been the smiley type. I've always been the good energy type. I've always been just a beautiful spirit. So even when I would try to portray to be that hard role, I don't think I was a good actor. So people always knew, I would say, but they never had confirmation because I never confirmed yes, no, maybe so. So I always just left it as don't ask, don't tell. So I tried to wear like certain clothes to look the part, but my just mannerisms and my way of expressions never matched what I tried to portray to look like because I am who I am.
And that's all we want. We want you to be authentic and be you. And the world has to accept all of us, no matter what race, what gender, what religion, what political ideology. I talk a lot about we need to find a way to tap into our humanity. I used to say get back to our humanity, but there's been so many instances and there's so much where we see that humans have not always been focusing on getting back or being humane to each other. So when I talk about getting back, quote unquote, to our humanity, I'm talking about we need to find a way to treat each other humanely, regardless of the orientation, regardless of the skin complexion, regardless of what part of the world you come from, regardless of how much generational wealth or lack thereof a person has. You know, we can go on and on and on and on and on. I want to focus on this period when you came out. What was that like for you? You finally say, hey, you know what? You like me, you love me, and if you don't, I don't give a damn. I'm going to be me. What was that moment like when you was just like, you know, did you wake up one morning? Because I remember when I woke up and I was 30, I was like, look, I ain't got to take this shit because I was going through some problems with my ex-wife at the time, who's the mother of our children. I was like, man, I ain't got to take this shit. I'm a grown-ass man. You know, what was like for you when you woke up and was like, you know what? I'm not going to hide. I want to come out. I want to be who I am authentically. What was that day like?
Honestly, it took a while to get to that. I'm just going to be me. Because even honestly, LP, when I came out, I was still in a sense creeping out the closet. Okay. But I didn't just jump out and say, look at me, this is me. It took me getting into, because after I graduated high school is when I like started to be around other people who were like me in the sense of in that community of the LGBT community. Started to venture off and to go out into that environment, but it still was kind of sneaking and creeping because I wasn't that during the days. It's just in the nightlife is when I was able to go around to be around like individuals, and I was still unfamiliar. I didn't know because I was a whole new world I've never been into. So I was like, oh wait, this exists. Oh wait, there's other people like me. Oh, there's different variations of people that are in this lifestyle. So that was just like a whole experience within itself. And gradually I started to build that momentum of confidence to say, this is me, take me or leave me, because I still had years and years and years of hiding, years and years and years of self-criticism and self-doubt and just projections of what the world told me I had to be, that I had to unlearn to really get into that place of embracing all of me. So that took from 21 up until my current age of 40, to where I just started to really express me and really be me with no apologies. So it took a build up. I won't just say like it was, this is the new day and this is accept Ray. It took me really strengthening that muscle to feel confident to show the world all of me. But first I had to love all of me before I can really present that to the world. For me not to live up to expectations of the world.
On your website, you wrote that you reached a point where you hit rock bottom. You say, I was tired of numbing my pain with alcohol. I was tired of being the victim in my life. In 2019, I made the decision to commit to healing and becoming the version of myself I know I came to this world to be. Mm-hmm. We talk about rock bottoms a lot on this podcast. And again, this is the Trigger Wanna Talk podcast. We're sponsored by Spotify for podcasters and produced by Independent Consulting Solutions, LLC. We're talking with our guest, the GQ man himself, Raymell Bentley from LA. I know for me being a first responder, there's a lot of friends of mine who are in the community that talk about that rock bottom moment. Some were suicidal. Some actually committed suicide. Some got into drug and alcohol abuse. Some got into other just detrimental behaviors. Some, unfortunately, were abused even more, even as adults. for you when you decided, hey, you know what, enough is enough. You know, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That moment in 2019 when you said, I'm done, I want to commit to healing. Tell us about those changes, because we don't just dialogue here. We talk about plans of action. We talk about coming up with solutions. Talk about, you know, what modality or modalities did you use? Was it a Western medicine? Was it Western therapies? Was it metaphysical therapies? Because you're a global spiritual energy coach. I want you to talk about this, how you overcame and started the healing process in 2019.
Yeah, it came to a point where I got tired of numbing. I think my last encounter before I truly started the journey of healing was I was out with some friends. I bartended in West Hollywood here in LA. It's kind of like the boys' town is what they call it. And I went out with some friends and I had like pre-gamed and drank at work before I got off. And then I went and had some drinks with them and I blacked out. And the next day I had like bruises on my body. And after getting the recap that I like got into a fight with someone that was in an Uber pool with me and my friend. And then I got into a fight with my friend, and just seeing, like, at the time I had a roommate, seeing how everyone was treating me, just like how people made me feel as though I was this monster. And I'm like, I'm not a monster. Like, why are you guys like treating me this way? But my actions were different at that time than what my words were saying. So just me knowing that that was something that had happened more than once, I knew that that was a repeat of my mother and father. And I promised myself I would not be like them. And I found myself turning into them the more I tried to stop from being like them. So from there, 2019, beginning of 2019, I quit my job at the bar. I went full throttle into my entrepreneur life. And a lot of self-doubt, a lot of unworthiness kept coming up for me, but I wasn't in that place of numbing, and I had to face it. And I remember I had a client at the time who had just finished this 3-day intense self-development program, and she invited me to her graduation ceremony. I thought I was going to support her, but what I was really doing was going to be introduced to my new journey of self-development, because after her graduation, they go and kind of talk to you about the program. And at the time there was some resistance. I'm like, this is a big investment. This is 3 days of like spending all of my time and being here. But something was calling me to it. And at first I tried to deny. I tried to not pick up the phone, but it kept ringing and ringing. And I knew I had to answer it. And I signed up for it. And I invested at that time like $1,000 for that 3-day event. And that opened up a door that I didn't even know needed to be open. It made me become aware that I wasn't the only one who experienced trauma. It let me see that other people have been sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused on different areas and walks of life. There was like professional lawyers, doctors, anyone that you can imagine was in that space. And we were all there together to work on ourselves. And that made me feel like I wasn't alone. And it let me know that there was work that I had to do. So after I did that 3-day intense self-development program, it just continued on in the sense of I just was led to different modalities of as far as work. And I got into like, I went into a motivational speaking conference after that. And then from there, I got baptized in 2020 for my birthday, because I was on this new beginning, fresh start. And it wasn't for religion, a religious purpose. It was more for a spiritual. Like I knew that I wanted to connect with the divine presence, whatever you call it. I wanted to connect closer to it. So I'm like, let me take this step. And then from there, I got a life coach. And that was like the biggest investment, because I paid over $7,000 to work with the life coach. And she has such a safe space to where I felt like, honestly, like we did internal surgery. Like we were able to get to a lot of the blind spots, get them out, allow me to create space. And after that 6 months of working with her, I felt like a new person. And then from there, the journey just continues on to where I'm so committed to, I like to say the healing was a part of my remembrance journey, but I'm no longer healing and I'm now remembering who I am and what I've always been.
That's dope that you got baptized more for a spiritual than a religious transformation. You don't hear too many people say that. I was baptized in a Baptist church some years ago, back in the late 2000s. And it was for a religious purpose. I know that in the LGBTQ community, a lot of members get a bunch of flack from religious entities because of what's typically either like in Christianity, there's a lot of references to the Old Testament and homosexuality. And, you know, I know with this being Pride Month, one of the things, and we typically don't deal with religion and politics, but I do want you to just talk about briefly, you know, what are your views on how religion is not what you sought? It was more spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Well, because for me, when it came to religion, I felt like it kept me away from God, from that presence, because of what was in a book that told me because of this is who I am and what I am, that I'm not accepted, that I'm going to go to hell, and that I'm living a sinful life. So I never felt accepted and I felt more rejected. So I'm like, that pushed me further away from that presence that's always lived within me, which felt me feeling isolated and alone. And I knew that even just growing up, that wasn't something that resonated with me. And as I started to really the self-development and got into the healing to remembrance, I realized that my true nature is spirit. And me in spirituality is just a ritual that continues to allow me to practice the connection to that source. And that's where I realized that I'm bigger than a box of what a religion can ever put me in. I'm even bigger than a box than what a label can ever put me in, because I'm an infinite being. So my infiniteness can never be contained. It's only meant to be expressed through my own unique expression.
I want to jump to situational awareness. And the reason I want to jump to that is this being Pride Month, and salute to all of those that are in the LGBTQ plus community. Your life is valued, it's valuable. You heard me say it when we did our interview, our pre-interview. If your brother LP needs a kidney and Raymell is not only a willing donor but a match, I'm going to make it. Even though I'm a heterosexual male, it doesn't matter. I'm getting a kidney from another living, breathing human being. See, that's why I say we got to focus on our humanity, because some people act like people in the LGBTQ plus community are aliens. You know, that you're not human. It's the same fucking shit that we dealt with and that we continue to deal with as melanated folks. The disrespect that we continue to see all across the spectrum, all across the board. You know, and I hate the word tolerance. I absolutely hate the word tolerance, because that means I have to tolerate being around you or what you represent or anything like that. Like, tolerance to me is doing something under duress. That's the equivalent from my definition of it. What do you say about tolerance?
I feel like tolerance is another word for ignorance, because tolerance is something that you are taught to do, which is not something that you, in a sense, that's what you grow into, that awareness of tolerance, versus when you are truly connected to yourself and you love yourself and know yourself, you can't help but to accept someone else, because we're all connected. We're all connected beyond these labels of gender, race, sexual preference, we're all a part of the same ocean. We're just on our own separate waves. And the disconnection and the separation, it continues to be passed on when a lot of ignorance is what people hold on to, because ignorance is you stand in a box of what you know and you're afraid to get out the box to grow and learn from others. So that's what we came in this world to do. We came to learn from each other by us being our unique self and learning how to express based on seeing someone else be themselves. And that bleeds into you feeling this like safe to do that for yourself. So I feel like often when you're trying to tolerate something or you're stuck in the box of tolerance, that means that you are unwilling to grow beyond what you know. So you stay stagnant and stuck, and your hurt, your pain, which leads you to project that onto hurt people. So you continue to pass it on the more you hurt.
When we talk about situational awareness, I'm going to come from a first responder perspective. There's been tons of breaking news stories about violent critical incidents, whether it be at a house or houses of worship, academic institutions, workplace, shopping malls, grocery stores, concert venues. Being a violent critical incident consultant, or the term is still active shooter hostile events. And I always tell people that term is getting ready to change, active shooter hostile events, because all of these violent critical incidents that we see in these breaking news stories don't involve firearms. The majority of them are, but not all of them. Just like the killing of the 4 students at the University of Idaho. That alleged perpetrator didn't have a firearm, didn't have an explosive. He used an edged weapon, allegedly. And so when we think about violence and situational awareness, I want to talk about crimes against the LGBTQ plus community. When the nightclub shooting happened in Florida and you worked in the bar, what went through your mind when you saw that news story?
There was a lot of fear. There was definitely a lot of uncertainty. You didn't know who to trust. You didn't know if it would happen in our area because it was so fresh and it was so I believe right after that, another incident happened. So you didn't know if it was going to be the domino effect that just went from state to state, city to city. Yeah. So there definitely was a lot of unease, a lot of dis-ease from not knowing if that would just be something you would experience. Because in that time, I was definitely going out a lot and I was definitely in the scene a lot. So you just didn't know what to expect. So it kept you guarded and feeling unsafe.
I want to touch on situational awareness in detail because not only is this Pride Month, it also is something that when I talk to anybody, I teach on Stop the Bleed, I teach CPR. BLS is short for the American Red Cross. And so part of my goal is to help people learn how to survive in these real times, not just myself, but my work partners. And so what are some of the things that from that incident and other incidents of these hate crimes, and they're hate crimes, what are some of the things that you and others in the LGBTQ plus community talk about in terms of situational awareness? What do you look out for? What are some of the warning signs of impending trouble that you advocate for and raise awareness for other members in the community?
The first foundational one I would say is always listening to your inner guidance, because you always have that knowing of when something just doesn't feel right. And from that place, that's when you're able to be more observant of your environment, of your surroundings, of just what is within your reach and distance. Because even after that experience, I personally chose not to allow myself to live from a place of fear, of wanting to, I just personally chose not to be paralyzed by that experience and just stay in a place of fear, because it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good to have to watch my back. It didn't feel good to have to watch every person that came into the restaurant that I worked in. It didn't feel good to be out and about and not know if you're like gonna be shot or attacked. So I always like that made me tap in within myself more to really just listen to, because we're always being guided. So it just allowed me to really just be centered within myself, which allowed me to look in my environments and kind of be more observant, but not from a place of fear, but just from a place of conscious, like being consciously and intentional with the things that I was doing. Meaning, if I'm out and about and I have like something I'm drinking, I'm not just loosely putting it down, because I know that there are people who have ill intentions and they have ulterior motives. So I was more cautious of, okay, if I'm there with some friends, I have what my drink with around them, because I know that they have my back and they're not going to put something in it or try to just do any harm towards me. So I was more just observant with what I was doing as far as my drinks, not getting too wasted. I didn't want to, because of my blackout times along my journey, I knew in that time, okay, if something did go down and I'm like just super wasted, I can't function in a conscious way. So I started to be more conscious of like, okay, 2 drinks, I'm good, versus me trying to overindulge to be in a blacked out state. So I started to make sure that I wasn't over my limit, and just enough to have a good time, but not enough to be disconnected from what was happening in that just moment of what I was in. So I started to just be more mindful of my intake. I started to be more mindful into the friends that I would be around. Like a lot of times you can just meet someone and you think that they're your friend, but in reality, everyone isn't your friend. So you have to be mindful that you know who you are out with, because in the past, I've had situations where I thought I was amongst friends, but they left me in vulnerable situations to where they would try to live vicariously through me. Because of how I look, I can attract pretty much anyone I want. And if someone isn't at the caliber to where I'm at, then they know that I can have what they can. So they try to use me as that like pawn to be the experience that they're not able to have themselves. And I've had that happen to me. I've had people who sent me off with people just to hear about it the next day, but they didn't know if that was someone who was trustworthy, safe to go with. So I've had experience to where that's happened to me. So now I just invite others to be mindful of the company you keep and make sure that that's a safe space to where they're not, because my motto, we come together, we leave together. You're not separating, you're not leaving with someone, because if you don't know them, I can't trust that for you. And I know that if you're overly intoxicated, you're not going to make the best choice or decision in that moment. So a friend is going to say, you know what, get the number, get the contact, and follow up. But in this now moment, you're not in the right place to go with someone. So just be mindful of the company you keep, because everyone isn't, even though you may think your friend, they're not. So just always be mindful of just who you're around and make sure that they have your back.
And what?
Make sure that they have your back, that they're not going to just send you off with anyone or leave you alone by yourself when you're in that intoxicated, vulnerable place.
Okay. You're 100%. I concur with you 100%. I used to do security in my early days of EMS, and I remember I worked at a casino, and in the casino they had a nightclub, and so on the weekends it'd be popping, and so and it'd be everybody's in there, you know. And one of the things that we used to tell people is don't, because you couldn't take drinks on the floor. And so people would like take a napkin and cover their cup up or their glass or what have you. And I'm like, you know, that's not going to prevent somebody from putting a date rape drug in your drink, you know, because you got a napkin on top of it or whatever. Only thing that's going to do is let the waitress know you're still, you know, consuming that. Don't take it off the table. One of the things that I like that you're talking about is this situational awareness, because again, when it comes to trauma, anybody can get it, anybody can give it. And so guys, No matter how you identify, you can be raped also. I'm going to say it again. When it comes to these conversations that we're having, don't think because you're a guy, I don't care if you are built like the Hulk or you're a slim, athletic build like myself, or, you know, you're 100 pounds soaking wet. Just because you identify as a guy does not mean that you cannot be raped or drugged and raped or drugged and beaten or drugged and robbed or drugged and assaulted or all of the damn above. We're talking about situational awareness here on the Trigger One and Talk podcast, sponsored by Spotify for Podcasters, produced by Penton Consulting Solutions, LLC, with our guest, Mr. GQ himself. And I'm going to keep calling you Mr. GQ himself, Mr. Raymell Bentley, because I'm going to show you all these pictures. Talking about situational awareness, let's move over to sexually transmitted diseases, or the term now sexually transmitted infections. We talked earlier about HIV, and we know that there are so many people that are living great, wonderful lives because the antiviral cocktails that science has come up with and scientists have come up with. We know there's a great group of meds that are available. People like Magic Johnson, who we talked about earlier, is living his best life. You know, he was diagnosed back in the early 90s with HIV, has far outlived so many people who unfortunately lost their lives. And again, HIV, anybody can get that. It's not a gay disease. It's not. You know, there are all type of people of all genders and all sexualities that have contracted HIV for various reasons. I'm a former, with the American Red Cross, HIV and AIDS educator back in the mid-90s in my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. I'm not telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I know. Let's talk about PrEP. What is PrEP?
PrEP is it's a preventative. I don't know if I want to call it a drug, but I guess it's a preventative way to keep you from catching or getting HIV or AIDS. So a lot of people, PrEP became popular, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. It's when it really became popular, and that's where it became the excuse to not protect yourself in the community, because a lot of people felt like PrEP was my magic shield. And it allowed people to be more loose in their interactions as far as just that form of exchange. But a lot of people are unaware that PrEP, though it may keep you from catching HIV, there's still so many other STDs that it doesn't prep you for. It doesn't prevent you from receiving. So I think a lot of it was sold to others that it is the savior, but often it keeps you in that trap of just being loose to where you may catch something else, and now you're dependent on some drug or something to keep you going and not being taken out by whatever else you may receive by just being on PrEP.
For those that are going to be watching, and I'm going to put a number of links in the show notes for this episode that airs tomorrow, June 8th, 2023. PrEP, and I like using verified sources. And if you don't like my sources, go find your own. This is from the CDC's website. It talks about PrEP. PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. So this is a medication that you can take to help reduce your chance, not eliminate, doesn't stop it. PrEP is a prophylactic medication that can reduce your chance of getting HIV from sex or injection drug use when taken as prescribed, and it's a prescription medication. It's highly effective, not 100% preventative. It's highly effective for preventing HIV. And so PrEP can be in the form of pills or shots. And there's two pills that are approved for PrEP, Truvada and Descovy. And the Truvada is for people at risk through sex or injection drug use, and Descovy is for people at risk through sex. It's not for people assigned female at birth who are at risk for HIV through receptive vaginal sex. And then Apretude is the only shot approved for use as PrEP. Apretude is for people at risk through sex who weigh at least 77 pounds or 35 kilograms. And so there's a ton of information on the CDC's website, among other websites, that talk about PrEP. They got just a Library of Congress amount of information on HIV, on transmission, just anything that you want to know. You can find even on, and we know people had their issues with the CDC during the pandemic and all that stuff or whatever. We're not talking about the pandemic. We're talking about HIV right now. So if you want more information, you can go to the CDC's website. You can go to the World Health Organization site. There's many organizations worldwide, especially here in the States, that do HIV and AIDS education. The American Red Cross, again, I was a former HIV and AIDS educator in the mid-90s. And so I want to let people know that, like Raymell said, you can get caught up in getting transmissions of any diseases through sex if you're not protecting yourself. You can't look at a person and say, you know what, that person looks so good, I don't believe they got a disease. I don't believe they got HIV. I don't believe that they got chlamydia. I don't believe that they got herpes. I don't believe that they have gonorrhea. I don't believe they got the clap. I don't believe they got crabs. I don't believe, you can't look at a person and say that. Nobody's walking around saying, here's my number, oh, and also here's my status. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that don't even get tested. If you're engaging in any sexual activity, oral, anal, vaginal, please, please, please use protection, and that starts in your mind. That's all we're saying. Mm-hmm. You want to get your freak on? Hey, if you do what you want to do. We're saying that people are still dying because of intentional ignorance. I want to jump to, since we're talking about Pride Month, one of the things I want to talk about is, you told me something that I didn't know. You said Pride Month was started by trans women in the Pride movement. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was Marsha. I don't butcher her name. I know her name is Marsha, but she... It's a Black trans woman who, they were just tired of the separation of the, it was just a lot of secrecy. I remember hearing stories when I used to work at the bar that I worked at of the older gents who would come in and like how they had to put covers on the windows so like the people, no one can see inside, because like the 80s and 70s, like if they were caught in that type of environment, they would be arrested or they would be harassed by like the police, and it would just be it wasn't accepted. So Marsha, she, I want to say in like the early 80s, started the Pride movement, to where they were just fed up and they were like, let's come together and protest for our rights and for our freedoms to be. And they caught a lot of slack in regards to, even in the community, because a lot of, and you would think that the LGBTQ community is one and unified, but there's still separation in there, because there's a lot of people in the community who are not acceptance of trans women or trans men or drag queens or drag kings, and which I never really understood, but I honestly...
Yeah, let's talk about that. Nope. Let's talk about that, bro, because I don't get it.
I never got it either.
I don't get it. Please enlighten. on what you believe, why, or what's going on with that, because that's blowing my mind.
My perception of it is you only dislike what you don't accept about yourself. So whenever you see someone living their truth and expressing themselves from their place of truth, it ignites and triggers something in you that you're not living your life in truth, because that's the only reason I could think why you wouldn't like someone who is in the sense the same as yourself, just in a different expression of it. Because for me, I know in 2016 and 2018, I did drag twice. I did drag for Halloween. And that was a whole different experience because I transformed into looking like a woman. But it made me, for one, know how drag queens are like, how that experience is for them. It made me know how women's experience of the prep and all of that. So until you're in someone else's shoes, you don't know how to walk in them. And for me, like doing that myself, it made me appreciate, and I won't even say accept, because I accept everyone, but it left less room for judgment, because it takes a lot of just guts to do something that's outside the norm and really own it and walk in it. So doing that myself, it allowed me to appreciate all variations of this rainbow, of this community, versus thinking it just has to be this way and it can't be any other way. So I feel like a lot of that projection is just people, because even in the Pride Month, a lot of the parades and what you see is people who normally are not that flamboyant in their everyday life, or who normally wouldn't dress so revealing or provocative. They use that as a reason to express. So if you're only using this month or this weekend or whatever that is for you to be prideful and to express yourself, that means outside of that time, you're still kind of hiding your truth and hiding yourself, because you're still worried about the world's projection or acceptance of you.
When you look at some of the stories in the media, for example, Dwayne Wade and his family situation, his former son, who now identifies as Zaya Wade. When you think about that story in and of itself, what do you say to someone who may be homophobic, may not understand that, hey, I don't see how you allow your minor child to make the choice of changing gender, not being not living a life according to the body that they were born in? What say you or people? And let me say this. I know the LGBTQ plus community doesn't meet at Raymell Bentley's house every Wednesday night for cigars and brandy. That's not what we're talking about. My question to you is, for someone who's an advocate who raises awareness for the rights of LGBTQ plus, what do you say about that to people who have a problem?
I say that what you're witnessing in regards to that is what true parenting is allowing the child, because I think that we get this misunderstanding that a parent's role is to tell a child who they should be, how they should be, when they should be. And what we're witnessing is parents allowing their child to express themselves the way that they feel called and comfortable to do. Because even for me, growing up in the environment that I did, I never felt safe to be all of me. And that took years off of me living my truth. And I lived the majority of my life a lie, because I wanted to be in what I felt my parents wanted me to be, what society wanted me to be. And that left me almost taking my life at 14. It left me numbing my pain, projecting my hurt. So what we're witnessing is parents allowing their child to express themselves, because who am I to tell someone what is right or wrong? Who am I to tell someone what is good or bad? Who am I to tell someone how to have their own unique human experience? That's not my place. For a lot of us, I like to think of it, we're driving trying to drive someone else's car, but our car is crashing, meaning you're so worried about what someone else is doing that your life is not where you want it to be. So a way of not focusing on that is let me project onto someone else what is good, bad, right, or wrong, versus you ain't even know where you're going or what you are heading towards. So I'm just seeing some, especially, and I like too that it's in the African American community, because that's where the stigma of him being a professional athlete, he has to be this alpha male, this masculine man, that he is showing compassion, he's showing openness, he's showing understanding. That in our community, we're not even taught that or even know how to exude that or give that. So the fact that he's showing that, of course, he's going to receive a lot of rebuttal. He's going to receive a lot of opinions. But the fact that he's not bothered by it, and he's like, this is my life, this is my child. I'm not looking for you guys to tell me what to do or how to do it. I'm doing what feels right for me. So I love that he's taking that stance and allowing his daughter to deliver truth, because beyond these labels of gender, sexual preference, and all of that, we are so much more than that. We are so much more than what we give our energy and focus to.
I recently just saw Irvin Magic Johnson. He posted a picture with himself and his son, EJ. And for those that don't know, EJ is part of the LGBTQ plus community also, and came out years and years and years ago. And I remember the words that he said about how he is so proud of his son, how he loves him, he supports the life that he's living. You know, he's like, I just want you to be you. I want you to live in your skin. I could not imagine. I have 6 children with my ex-wife, 5 boys, 1 girl. If any, and none of them are part of LGBTQ. However, if one of them told me, you know what, Dad, I don't look at myself as heterosexual, whatever title or whatever, I would hate to think that I would rather them be dead than not be them true selves. Because I hear this shit all the time. I hear guys and fathers say, I would rather my son be fucking dead. I would rather my son be dead than be gay. That fucks me up.
And that's the ignorance that was passed. That was ignorance that's been passed. So that's the truth. You know how you have generational trauma? That's generational ignorance that continues to be passed. And it's it takes the Magic Johnson ways to change that. And there's so many others who aren't in that professional light, who are embodying and showing so much unconditional love and unconditional support, but it's not in the news. But that's why I don't watch the news and I don't feed my mind that, because it keeps you separated, it keeps you in anger, it keeps you in fear, versus you can just go outside in your neighborhood, go to a park, and you're able to see all walks of life coming together. So that's what I like to see, the real, what I can see with my eyes, versus the real REEL of what they're telling me is real, because only my heart can see what's really in front of me versus what is being projected upon me.
We're going to be wrapping up this interview soon. I want to switch to a couple things before we get to our last segment, our last 2 segments, because we got a missing person case, and this is Pride Month, so we're going to be focusing on missing persons who are part of the LGBTQ community. Bentley Gems. Let me bring this back up on the screen here. Because my brother has this thing that he calls Bentley Gems on his IG. And every day, this young man gets in his vehicle and he has some amazing commentary that this is not scripted. It's not something that, is long. I'm going to play one of them. Let me see let me just pull it up. This one, and I'll post the link to your IG because sometimes it doesn't play the sound or whatever. I want people to go to it. I'm just going to read part of what you have on some of these Bentley gems. You know, because to me, you talk a lot about. You say, if you're watching this video right now, there's no coincidence. This message is for you. You say, I'm here to remind you that things always work out for you. You may not know how. You know, you may not even know when, but know that it will work out for you. What you're going through right now, it's just like a cloud that's passing. It will pass. Allow yourself the space now to be in gratitude. You know, really be in gratitude for who you are, and where you are going. Now, I want people to go to your IG so they can listen to you say it. I'm just reading it. I want people to go and listen to all of these gems that you post every single day where you're talking about how you give motivational commentary. What made you start doing this?
I knew that there was more to me than my vessel. And to be honest, my Instagram was hacked in September of 2021. It got hacked. And before it got hacked, I was all about putting up the photos with no shirt and showing the body because I thought that would bring the audience and bring the likes. But I tried to merge some speaking videos in, but I really didn't honestly have the confidence or belief in myself that that would be what people wanted from me. And then once my Instagram page got hacked, that was like the gift that I didn't even know I needed to really start from scratch and to rebuild myself of just my awareness and share those gems with others. So I did it scared. I didn't know how it was going to be received, if people were going to take to it, but I just stayed consistent. And I just started with just doing one video, and then I was getting called to do 2 videos a day, and I just stayed consistent to where now the messages I get from people telling me how it supports them, how it helps them, how they look forward to it, and honestly, those words come through me. So I never know I don't even remember what the videos are until I go back and listen to what they said supported them. And I was like, oh, that was a good message. Because I do it after I meditate in the morning, and I do it after I meditate in the gym. So I'm okay, and it just comes through me.
Comes through. Okay. That's awesome. When did you start doing this?
I started doing those actual, like the car chronicles, the car Bentley gems. September of 2022. Actually, no, September 2022. Or was it 21? One of the two. 21 or 22, one of the two.
I'm telling you, man, you got some great gems, bro.
Thank you.
You got a quote that I want you to expound on before we wrap up here. And I want you to stay on for this missing person case that I'm going to read. And I'll have the link for it also. You said, be a thermostat, not a thermometer. What does that mean? Because that's dope.
You know how you hear... Thank you. You know how you hear often people tell others to match someone's energy, or I'll match the energy that's given to me. Whenever you're in that place of matching energy, that means you are a thermometer, meaning like you are waiting to see what this temperature is so you can know how to be or who to be. But when you're a thermostat, you set the tone. Your energy sets the tone of what you attract and what you allow into your life. So whenever you have a strong foundation of love, of compassion, of joy, of forgiveness, of wisdom, and that's your aura, you can't help but to attract that. So you no longer need to change or shift who you are. You just be who you are, and you automatically attract likes. So always be true to you and stay true to yourself, so you don't have to adapt or adjust to anyone else.
I got one last question for you. If you could write a letter or an email to little Raymell, at whatever age, under 18, what would you say?
You have always been worthy. You have always been enough. That gift that people teach you about of being just so kind, so soft, so tender has always been your superpower. And it is my mission to continue to allow that to shine because you have always been a star.
Man, that's a mic drop right there. How can people get in touch with you? Because I want to give them your link tree as well as your website information. When I say this brother is, see, y'all want to know why I call him Mr. GQ. That's what I'm saying. Y'all got to watch this podcast. Look at the Tom Ford suit that this man got on. I mean, damn. I mean, the Tom Ford suit, bro. Like, come on, man. You're killing the game, bro. You're killing it.
Thank you. If you want to connect with me, that you can definitely go to www.bentleytransformation.com. You can go and book a discovery session if you need support with just stagnant energy or just feeling as though you are ready to expand on your journey. I have my Bentley Gems jewelry line where I have different earth stones that I hand make myself. Well, I don't make the stones, but I put them together and hand make the bracelets for others. And then that's like a piece of me with you. And they support you in so many ways. You could use them for, if you go to the Bentley Transformation and go to shop, go to the top, and then you'll see the Bentley Gems bracelets. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, I just started that just a way to support others, just because there's a lot of energy in each stone that I put together. And my social media is...
This picture is you with the shades on?
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I ain't never seen you with facial hair. I was like, who is that?
There's different levels. There's different levels.
Yeah, that's dope. I was like,
Bentley.
who is that? No, that's what's up. Because, you know, I got facial hair, and you know, you got so much gray in your facial hair, you know, in your beard and stuff or whatever. And I've never ever seen you with facial hair. So that's what I was like, man, wait a minute, who's that?
It makes a cameo every now and then.
Okay, that's what's up. Let me go back to your link tree. What else you got going on? What's the Join the Fit by Bentley Body Sculpting program? What's that about?
I support others with really getting there. I'm about mind, spirit, and body. So if you are at a point to where you want to sculpt your body, if you want to drop some weight, you want to really, I like to say, enhance what you already have. I have my own fitness app where I create workout routines. You have accountability. You have biweekly check-in calls to really just help you. That's what I originally started in personal training, and I ventured into life coaching. So I have the body sculpting program available if you want to just enhance your fitness.
And then your YouTube channel was Raymell Bentley Motivation. Again, Raymell Bentley Motivation. Now, look, don't worry about seeing a whole bunch of links. I'm going to have this link tree that has all of these links in the show notes for this episode that airs tomorrow. We named this interview Universal Laws of Bentley. And if you go to Raymell's YouTube channel, he talks a lot about universal laws. So he has one that says Universal Law of Gender. And these are short videos. They're like under 5 minutes. He has one that says the universal law of compensation, universal law of cause and effect, universal law of correspondence, and perpetual transmutation, universal law. So what are these universal laws? Are these similar to the gems, or this is something totally different?
The universal laws is what I have discovered that how this universe operates. A lot of people compare it to spiritual laws. A lot of them people compare it to, in a sense, the 10 Commandments. And it's just really how to work and flow with this universe, because it has laws that a lot of people are unaware of. And often we think of laws as man-made laws. but there's universal laws that can't be broken, and we're unaware. So often we work against them versus with them. So just like there's law of gravity, we know what goes up will always come down. There's different universal laws that we don't have awareness of. So it's my mission is to support others with how to co-create with the universe and how to use your power to create a life that you love and you want to live.
Excellent. Again, folks, Raymell Bentley's link tree will be posted in the show notes for tomorrow's episode, June 8th, 2023. This episode is entitled Universal Laws of Bentley with Raymell Bentley. One of the things that I wanted you to stay on for is this last episode. So we're going to move into our last segment, which is our missing persons case. We do a missing person case at the end of each episode. In those cases, 99% of them are melanated men, women, and children. We want to bring the same energy and media coverage to those cases that we don't see in the media too much. It could be a kidnapping, a runaway, or an abduction. This story comes from insider.com. This story came out last year, July 15th, 2022. The story is entitled, Police Say Missing Mississippi College Student Was Last Seen Leaving His Apartment in a Robe and Slippers. And basically the story says, and this is an LGBTQ person. It says in the video posted by police on Thursday, the father of Mississippi student Jimmy J.Y. Lee, age 20, is urging anyone with information about his son's disappearance to contact police and help find my son. That's his quote, help find my son. Lee, who wears makeup and women's clothing in some photos posted on social media, but uses he/him pronouns, according to his Facebook page, was last seen at 5:55 a.m. last Friday, leaving the student housing campus walk apartments in Oxford. He was wearing a robe, a silver robe, gold sleeping cap, and slippers, according to a statement from the Oxford police. And let me bring the story up because I'm reading it, but I want people to be able to see it. And I'll post the link also to this story. I'll go ahead and continue. The father said, I want everyone to know that whether you're black, white, green, polka dot, it doesn't matter who you are. He was there to help if he saw the need. Jay's father, Jimmy Lee Sr., said in the video. Lee is a social work major and campaigned to be the University of Mississippi homecoming king in 2021, receiving more than 45% of the initial vote, enforcing the runoff with his opponent before losing the final election, according to the school's newspaper. His disappearance is being investigated by the Oxford Police Department and the University of Mississippi Police Department in tandem. Neither immediately responded to the insider's request for comment. Police found Lee's car at a local towing company on Monday, according to OPD. The car was towed from the Molly Bar Trails apartment complex about 2 miles from Campus Walk the day he went missing. Lee may have been visiting someone there, according to the cops. Law enforcement officials said they sent Lee's vehicle to the Mississippi State Crime Lab for processing and have conducted, quote, about a dozen search warrants on both physical and digital entities. They also began searching certain areas of Oxford with the K-9 unit and rescue team, according to the statement. I'm asking if anyone knows anything or sees anything, say something. That's a quote from Lee's father pleading in this in the video. He also said, quote, contact law enforcement. Just tell them what you know. Good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. You can call anonymous. You don't have to leave. You can call Crime Stoppers. You can call the Oxford PD. You can call the University of Mississippi's security department, their police department. You can contact the Insider. If you go to insider.com, they have a news desk. We want to bring the same media attention to the plight of missing persons that are melanated that we don't typically see in mainstream media. Jimmy J. Lee is a person just like I am, just like Raymell is, just like your mama and your daddy and your cousin and your sister and your brother and your auntie and your grandparents and your great-grandparents and their great-grandparents. Doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're all human. And at some point, sooner, I hope, rather than later, we got to treat each other humanely, or we're going to continue doing stories like this because people are dying. People are being abused. People are coming up missing. People are being treated like second-rate, third-rate, no-rate citizens. We got to do better. I want to thank you, Raymell. I want to give you your flowers, brother, for being the person that you are. You know, one of my closest friends, she is part of the LGBTQ community, and she was my best person when I married Mrs. LP back in 2019. And a lot of people were like, who's your best man? I said, it was my homegirl. And they're like, why? I said, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have met Mrs. LP. Ever. I would have never met her. And so, and she's not a sister as far as biologically, but she's like a blood relative. And you know what? Let me say this before we go. I got more relatives than I got family. And I'm going to say it again. I got more relatives than I have family. And that's a damn shame. And we need to do better as blood relatives. And I believe we all have more relatives than family. Raymell, you got any closing remarks? Because we're done with this particular episode, brother. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, myself, Mrs. LP, and the whole Trigger Warning Talk podcast crew. The mic is yours.
My pleasure. And I want to thank you once again for having me on. And what's coming up for me to just share as the last word is united we stand, divided we fall. And the more that we come together in unity beyond these labels and we're able to see beyond that, we're able to truly see the essence of who we all are. And we're all spirits having this unique human experience. And I love that you brought the humility, because humility gives us the ability to see beyond what we were taught and to open our hearts and our minds to see what has always been in front of us. And that's love, that's oneness, and that's unity, that we all, because we're all a part of the same rainbow. It's Pride Month, and the rainbow is the representation, but this thing called life is truly a big rainbow, that there's so many different flavors of different colors that makes it beautiful. So there's not just one of anything, there's an abundance, limitlessness of everything if we open our hearts to see it.
Live in awareness, never live in fear. Keep your head on a swivel. Stuff happens all the time. It's not a matter of if, but when and where an emergency is going to happen. And what are you going to do if you get caught up in one of these situations? Always, always, always be aware of your surroundings. Take a first aid, CPR, stop the bleed class. Learn how to save somebody's life, because the life that you save may be a loved one, and it could be your own. I and my work partners, we teach all these things that I just named. So you can always reach out to me. We travel across the country doing all of these different trainings also. So for the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, LP out.